you went. So that's good.
Yeah, no, they had a great turnout, and Sylvia Nash always is a
Oh,
diamond.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, she does. Well, good.
yeah, and I got to say hi to Miss Fawn briefly. So
Oh, good. Okay.
Karen, I'm glad you brought that up. I have it on my calendar for tomorrow morning.
yes, well, they introduced you today, and
Ooh.
somebody asked me where you were seated because they wanted to go talk to you. And I said, I'm not sure. Look over there.
Well, at least I don't have to get up early in the morning now.
Yeah, I know. That was dark 30 for sure.
I will send my apologies.
Well, again, they may have thought that you were just in the crowd, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, very good. Well, at this time, I would like to call to order our Glendora City Council meeting of February 8th, 2022. It is now 7 p.m. Tonight's public meeting will be conducted utilizing Zoom video communications. This allows the city to conduct essential business and comply with Public Health Administration recommendations, protecting both the public and city employees while practicing social distancing, and by limiting exposure by not having in-person public meetings. To ensure that the public will be able to participate in our meeting tonight, public comments can be submitted as live comments during the meeting. You would be invited to use the raise hand icon at the appropriate time, and comments can also be submitted via email at publiccomments@cityofglendora.org. With that, Madam Deputy City Clerk, will you please conduct the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would like to conduct an oral roll call and request that each council member respond with present when their name is called. Councilmember Alawas.
Present.
Councilmember Thompson.
Present.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Present.
And Mayor Davis.
Present.
All council members are present. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That takes us to our agenda. We're at list closed session, and this evening we did not have any closed session items. So with that, it leads us to the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Tonight, our invocation will be led by Senior Pastor Paul Berry of Calvary Chapel Revival, and our pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Friedendahl. So with that, Pastor Berry, welcome.
Mayor Davis, at this point, we have not seen Pastor Berry come in through the meeting. He may be having technical difficulties at this time.
Okay, well, with everyone's permission then, let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and please stand if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Has Pastor Berry been able to sign in yet?
No, we've not been able to get him to sign in.
Okay. Well, we will continue forward then, and if he pops in the next few minutes, we will invite him to lead us in the invocation. Student reports, we have none. Hopefully they will be joining us at our next meeting. We look forward to hearing their updates. Reordering of or additions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additions or anything they would like to reorder?
No.
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, then that takes us to public comment. At this time, I would like to open the public comment time and invite members of the public to speak. They have 3 minutes to speak. If you are wishing to speak tonight, I invite you to use the raise hand icon and we will call on you. And also, have we received any written communication to be read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier today, we did receive 2 emails through the public comment email that were attached to the agenda, made available to the public and sent to council. In addition to that, we received 1 other email that I will read, and we have 2 people that have raised hands to participate that are attending this meeting now. So at this time, I'm going to read the email that was received earlier today by Monica Lopez. Thank you for your time. I would like to request to see what we can do to put lights up on our baseball fields for our kids to play ball at Goddard Middle School for the Glendora American Little League. Our kids are limited on play time because there's no light after 5:30 around this time of year, fall through winter. Parents are rushing home from work and everyone's trying to get practice in before the sun goes down, but there's just not enough light. It's 5:30 and it's dark. I was walking on the track yesterday while my son had batting practice, and there was a couple of teams on the fields that started practice at 5, and by 5:30 they had to stop and take a knee because the sun was going down and not making it safe to continue playing. We have so many families committed to our community, and program is really growing every year with more and more children and families getting involved. We have around 400 kids playing this year. We have these outdoor spaces that are not being utilized enough because of light. Lights on, play ball. Let's give our kids light so they can play ball. Can you help me get light for these kids to play ball? Respectfully, Monica Lopez. At this time, Matt Russell, who's attending the meeting, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Matt Russell. I'm over a 50-year resident of Glendora. I have been spearheading the movement to bring concealed carry issuance back to the city of Glendora for the last 7 years. I have read Chief Egan's briefing that he is going to go over tonight. And I have to say I am pleased in one aspect that what he is presenting is specific and measurable. I am still very displeased that it has taken this long. All of this should have been done more than a year ago. This has also gotten to be personal with me. The level of lawlessness that we are facing in Glendora and in LA County in general has never been as egregious as it is now, the threats that we all face. And I stand by the letter that I sent to Chief Egan and also copied City Council that it is still, even with the timeline presented, it will be at least a year before anyone in Glendora will be issued a concealed carry permit. And that is too long. This has taken too long. There have been several instances personally that I have faced a situation where I have resented not being able to be armed. And this is a civil right, in my opinion. I am hoping that the United States Supreme Court will weigh in before June of this year to strike all of the May issue requirements. I also endeavor to speak and hope that my colleague Daryl Evans and I, who have met with Chief Egan 15 months ago about this, will be able to weigh in and provide suggestions and comments regarding the policy for issuance, which according to Chief Egan's briefing is still being developed between now and end of this May. So I hope that we can meet again with Chief Egan to provide input to that for his decision on what the policy will be is regarding issuance. And anyway, it's been too long. This has been too long coming. I hope that this indicates a commitment on the part of the city and the chief of police to actually do this. And again, we have done everything possible to comply with the law, me personally and our group. And I will close saying that the city does bear responsibility for whatever happens. And this action needs to be taken right now. So appreciate the time, and hope we'll be in charge to contact with Chief Egan
Thank you.
about a meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Marilyn Dowdle.
Good evening. For some reason, my wife's computer is kicking out her name, but I'm actually her husband, Jim Dowdle.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Mayor Davis and City Council members, good evening. My name, as I've said, is Jim Dowdle. My wife, Marilyn, and I are the neighborhood watch captains of about 30 families here on the 100 and 200 block of North Country Club Road, including Cumberland, Greencroft, and Palomar Streets in Glendora. We work very closely with Nita Peroni, the Community Services Officer for the Glendora Police Department. She's very helpful, supportive, and assists us with many of the neighborhood watch challenges we have had in our area. Some time ago, several neighbors asked if I would inquire about having ADA compliant sidewalk ramps in our neighborhood. I contacted Allison Sweet, who has been very helpful. She, along with Alexis Escobar, came to our neighborhood and invited me to walk the neighborhood and show them the areas where we were requesting ramps. Adam Raymond has been very supportive by making sure the request was followed up. And Wendell Thompson, the council member over my area district, has helped me also and asked if I would speak to the council this evening. On behalf of all the 30 families in our neighborhood watch area, I encourage the city council to continue to act upon moving forward with a contract of the installation of ADA ramps. After you've approved the contract, I ask that we be considered to have our area be one of the first to have construction started. I recently had an MRI on my lower back. It was thought that I had a real good case of sciatica. The MRI shows I have 3 herniated discs in my lower back. And many in our neighborhood during COVID have walked the sidewalks in the area to obtain exercise. Many of the gyms, as we know, were closed. Several in our neighborhood have developed mobility issues. Many of my neighbors have lived in the area for many years. Marilyn and I have lived in this house for 43 years, and prior, we lived on Carroll Avenue in Glendora for 10 years, all of our married life. So I would ask you, please continue to move forward with the installation and the approval of the contract for ADA ramps. And I thank collectively all those that I've named and everybody on the council for your support. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that is wishing to speak at this time?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we've received no further requests and no emails via the public comment email.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close public comment. And has Pastor Barry joined us?
Sorry, he has not joined us at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you. We will move on to member statements and reports. Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Great to be a part of everything that's going to happen tonight. Just let me be brief. I'm just going to talk about the goal line. I would encourage each and every one that is tuned in to go to the goal line website, the city website, to retain current facts about what's going on. The bridges are continuing to be built out, so honor the change in terms of traffic and stop signs and everything that's going on there on Route 66, Grand and Lone Hill. They are being built well and moving along on pace. And so we're, happy about that. The Pasadena Street, I wish I had good news there, but I don't. There's a setback there with the work that SCE needs to get done. So that street will open, I believe, on March the 27th. So we had hoped that it would be prior to that, but unfortunately that work needs to be done. And then once the SCE gets done, then everything else will have to, be done after that. I believe that's about it. Just continue to drive in a cautious way, respectful of what's going on, and thank you for everybody that is doing that. And with that, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Karen. This afternoon, I participated in a meeting with Adam and our water department, as well as Three Valleys, concerning the status of moving forward with a plan to bring back our Irwindale well facilities that have been operable for many years due to being in a Superfund site. The benefits of bringing these wells back on is basically water security for us. And it's going to be a long process to go through this, but we have a lot of buy-in on this going forward, which is great. At some point in time, it'll be a city council action to approve plans, and hopefully we'll get funding from the outside to do this, to bring it back, since it isn't a Superfund site, and we have some interested parties with the water as well. This Thursday, I'll be attending a half-day session with the League of California Cities, since I'm part of the Transparency and Labor Relations policy. Our main objective is to consider and develop a 2022 work plan moving forward. We're going to be discussing over this next year concerning cities as well as the league. Also, if anyone's asking about or concerned or have any questions about what's going on with Taylor Morris, I met with the superintendent, and the dirt that's being moved from the northeast section or northeast track is going to the northwest track. They're building 5 homes that are all pre-sold. And I was informed that this coming May or June, they're going to start breaking ground on the northeast section or northeast track. And they've been working with Edison for the relocation of the lines, as well as the county flood control, because there's a big area for collection, and they're redesigning that as we speak. So the anticipated time is going to be somewhere around May or June. They're anticipating breaking ground. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be having a community meeting with all the folks involved in that area to answer questions. They're very, very helpful. They're excited about moving forward. I believe so is the community as well, after a long 20 some odd years of going through this, that it will have some closure to this. There's no plans for asking the city to change any of the lot size. They're going to be half-acre lots. They are working on some of the aesthetics of what the homes will look like and submit that to the city. But by and large, it's going to be moving as it was before. That's all that I have for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no reports tonight. However, I do wish to make a statement or a comment. Long ago, a valued mentor taught me that if a name comes up or an event comes up more than a couple of times in short order, it's either for something very good or something not very good. And in this case, we have an opportunity that needs some attention. I'd like to address the repeated acts and events that are happening in our village with our youth that are not being good characters, and they seem to be presenting misdeeds and getting into mischief. And I think these things need to be addressed, because we have some poor activities and frankly embarrassing behavior that seems to happen, to the point where our local businesses are asking for additional police patrol, and the police are responding, and residents are reluctant to go to the villages, and these are just not good things. I think that the parents of these youth need to revisit with their children what the values of how to behave out in public might be, and what those expectations are with respect, and what good character is. And we should expect nothing less. While it also takes a village to raise a community, I'm going to ask that our schools, who are big parts of helping develop these characters and the citizenship of our community, get involved to help re-engage those values. Many of these activities happened on shortened school days or early out days, if you will. So I think they they maybe not be responsible, but they have a big point in helping guide these kids to doing good things. Would like to just resolve these problems before these misdeeds become embarrassing for the parties involved. So we ask for your help and ask them to please engage and know where your children are. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Thank you, Karen. And I want to start by acknowledging that February 7th through 11th is being recognized this year as National School Counselors Week. So I've got a daughter-in-law that's a local school counselor, and the understanding of what, and to speak of what David just mentioned, a lot of issues that school counselors deal with go unnoticed. And hats off to everybody that decides to pick that up and work with today's youth. It's an extremely important position. On another note, I wanted to give a report on the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments Regional Housing Trust, of which I represent the city on. And it was, the trust was started a little over a year ago with the idea of trying to help fund housing, affordable housing and homeless housing. And I haven't been giving a lot of updates on it because it takes a while to get something like this up and running. But one of the good things, just to give a brief update, we have in the pipeline of projects in the San Gabriel Valley that are being considered, we have over 1,000 residential units that are in the pipeline for funding at some point or another that more than likely will be moving through the system within the next couple of years. So there's a lot of good things going on when it comes to this, but as far as our trust by itself, we have currently funded 232 units. So that is 232 people. These are homeless housing units, 232 people that were on the streets that have a roof over their heads now. And we want to continue to move forward on this effort. A heartfelt thanks goes out to Senator Suzanne Rubio, who has been very instrumental in helping to fund our efforts. We got our initial kickoff funding of a couple of $1 million. And in this past cycle, she was able to obtain $20 million in order for us to help some of this housing move forward. So just wanted to give that update, and that is it. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. A couple of announcements. Just a reminder, as Joe Cena mentioned last week about the Super Bowl of Caring, SOUPER, that up until Super Bowl Sunday, donations at the chamber at First Christian Church can be made to Rotary online on their webpage as we raise funds for those who face food insecurity, and those proceeds will be donated to Shepherd's Pantry. And as everyone is marking your calendars for the spring, April 27th, you can mark as the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. That is the date that has been set for that. And then this evening, I would like us to adjourn our meeting in memory of two individuals. One, Mary Cook, who was the widow of former city manager Art Cook. She died recently, and Mary, throughout Art's career, was there supporting many of the projects and community involvement that he was part of, but also on her own. She supported the band and pageantry as her kids were part of that, supporting other school activities and community activities through service clubs. And so we offer our condolences to the Cook family and are thankful for her contributions to Glendora. And also we adjourn tonight in memory of Norma Rowley. Norma has been a large presence, not only in protecting the trails and community preservation and history, being there to support scouting along with Gordon, being very involved in her church community at the United Methodist Church, that Norma always said yes when she was asked to be part of something. So she will truly be missed, and we're thankful for her many contributions to Glendora. And as Mr. Friedendahl mentioned, it takes everyone in the community to do your part, that all of us are responsible for our words and actions, that we model that good behavior and encourage that amongst all of our community members. So with that, that takes us to city manager and city attorney statements. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Raymond.
Quickly, two things for me this afternoon. This week, similar to the councilman, I'll also be sitting on a policy committee for League of California, the revenue and taxation. This afternoon, we'll discuss several potential ballot measures coming before the voters. And in addition, this evening, we'll have some commentary from staff on consent calendar item number 7, which was brought up by Jim this evening, and that is the approval for the construction of those sidewalk ramps. So just wanted to provide some clarification. That item is on the agenda before you this evening, and I believe staff will give a brief update on that prior to voting on the consent calendar. Thank you very much.
Mr. Winder.
Nothing from me, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Well, then that brings us back to you, Mr. Raymond, for your fabulous COVID-19 reopening of the economy update.
All right. So as many of you probably read yesterday, state of California announced the ending of the masking mandate in some instances on February 15th. For that mandate for indoors will end for what they're deeming as fully vaccinated individuals, effective essentially 12 p.m. on February 16th. That masking mandate will not apply in school sites, healthcare settings, public transit, and congregate care facilities. The state announced today that it was also looking on finding ways to modify or eliminate the masking requirements for K-12 education as well. Similarly, earlier today, the County of Los Angeles announced that they would not be following the state's protocols for unmasking of fully vaccinated individuals, citing previously announced case data requirements. Our local supervisor, Catherine Barger, announced that based on some preliminary data, the county may not reach those thresholds until May. And so we've seen this before at a county level where not all supervisors in the public health department agree on a health order when it does not align with the state of California, which, as you can imagine, will cause lots of confusion. We anticipate this will be a topic of discussion at the board meeting, at the county board meeting next week. And understandable how this causes the confusion for not only those in LA County, but through the entire state of California as well. So as we know more, we will let everyone know, update our signage to ensure that we're compliant with whatever mandates that are out there, both at the county or state level. But internally are hoping there is some alignment between the county and state to eliminate confusion. We've previously talked about in-person council meetings. The largest hindrance is the requirement of having to wear face masks and speak into a microphone. So we will continue to monitor on that front and hopefully provide clarity when some exists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That takes us to our police department quarterly update. Welcome, Chief Egan.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council and public watching tonight. Let's get my presentation up.
Okay, hold on one moment for me.
No worries.
I'm gonna have to switch screens. Stop share. Hold on one second.
Chief, we're going to try to make this as difficult on you as possible is what we're actually going to try to do. So I hope you have it memorized and you can present from memory.
I probably could. I do have the version that was sent to Elvia if I need to pull it up, but it'd be helpful to have the slides in front of me so that everybody could see what I was talking about. Got a lot of vision when it comes to the flock and crime stat.
Perfect. We'll get that for you.
Very good. Here we go. Next slide, please. Again, good evening. Chief Matt Egan, Glendora PD, here to provide my February Police Department update. It's part of our quarterly plan to provide high-level communications between the police department and the community and council about projects, updates, programs, new and different things, report back on specific items. Tonight's council, I will talk about 4 particular things, some fairly heavyweight items, all kind of on the same topic line. As you heard in public comment, I'm going to provide a concealed weapon permit update. Also going to wrap up the FLOC, which is our community camera system for license plate readers, end of year update, and talk about some successes. Go over the 2021 crime statistics with a disclaimer about what COVID has done to skew statistics a little bit. And then follow up with follow-up meeting and kind of an update of where we're at with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office and District Attorney George Gascon's special directives. Next slide, please. Diving right into concealed weapons. Concealed weapon processing, better known as CCW. I'll use that term throughout this presentation. We, the city of Glendora, handed over processing of CCW applications to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in 2016. This was done as a cost-saving measure, both personnel time and expenses, relative expenses, provided for a more consistent permit process, having a larger county-wide agency processing all local agencies. All but 7 agencies, all independent cities in the Los Angeles County area did contract or have an agreement with the Sheriff's Department to process CCWs. And as stated on the slide, it was a goal and objective included and adopted in the fiscal year 2016-2017 annual budget, the cost saving portion of that and personnel expense. Here we are today in 2022, and we began this process as indicated in the public comment period in 2021, that local control of permit, CCW permit process is being pursued. Next slide, please. So as we talk about how to endeavor into this, it's not as easy as just flipping a switch. To achieve local control, we have to talk about policy. That's a policy based by legislatively directed and guidance provided by both the penal code and government code sections. We need to develop an application procedure. Now, granted, we had a procedure prior to 2016, but those things are outdated. We need to be more contemporary, more streamlined. And if we're trying to do this while still not overtly impacting personnel costs, we need to do this in an efficient way. So we're developing that application processing now. We need to look at the investigative steps that are required. Also, communication and correspondent templates. We're going to get a lot of applications. We need to be very transparent about what the process is, what the process will look like, and how that process will move from phase to phase for applicants. We're going to look at finalizing any contract terms with any third parties there may be. Remember that anytime there's a weapons processing, there is a fingerprinting component. So we'll have to make sure that our systems are in place for that. And any other to be determined requirements, which could be insurance for applicants or psychological examinations. One of the bigger things we need to really look at is developing a fee schedule. New fees are going to require city council adoption. Fees and costs, we need to find that careful balance. Obviously, we're not going to recoup 100% of our costs for each application. I think that would be an undue burden on the applicant. But we need to find that careful balance. And the only way we can do that is to really dive into what time it takes to investigate and process one of these applications from start to finish, apply a fully burdened rate of an investigator to that time, look at the fees that are legislatively required by code, such as fingerprint processing and other items, and then have that conversation in open forum to find that careful balance. To be perfectly transparent, we're looking at all of the other 7 agencies in the county and seeing what they're charging for fees and trying to find where that careful balance might be. And then at the conclusion, we do need to notify the sheriff's department that we will be taking it back and end the agreement between the city of Glendora and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Next slide. So what everybody always wants to know is, when's this all going to occur, right? And I want to be cautious here that I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. The world as we know it has become uncertain. 1 month we think we're going to fly by and do things great, and then Omicron happened, and the Omicron spread through our agency fairly quickly, like most places. But what it did is made minimum staffing levels come to a head. And so I can't predict the future, but I can provide some loose timelines. Number 1, policy, procedure, investigative steps, they're in development now. That began after the first of the year. We estimate that those should be complete by May of 2022. We have the base policy from Lexpol. Lexpol is our policy administration contract company. It's meant for law enforcement agencies in the state of California and beyond. They provide basically a boilerplate language policy. Now we need to take time to adopt it to the Glendora way. In it are the legislatively required components to be in compliance with government code. But we need to fold in our processes and who those specific people are for steps. We need to solidify the contracts and agreements with any third parties. Again, we'll take care of that by May of 2022. Then at the mid-cycle fiscal year 2021-2023 budget discussion, which will be in June of 2022, that is when we'll have this fee discussion. We'll talk about, like I said before, finding that careful balance between what we will charge for application reviews, application processing, legislatively required things, and have that conversation in public so that we can seek guidance from council on that. If approved, those fees become effective 30 days after adoption. Then we would notify the LA County Sheriff. That would be right around July 2022, and the tentative timeframe for application acceptance, basically turning on that light switch and saying, come on in, would be about September of 2022. Before I go on and talk about the investigator process and what may influence that timeline for application processing, I do want to say that these dates were conservative. We're always very cautious to provide dates that we don't want to get ourselves locked into because we don't have that crystal ball. We could have a particular investigator who's planning on processing these investigations fall ill with something, or a personnel matter occur where I need to make a quick decision and reassign personnel. And right now our timelines are estimated, and there is a very good possibility that they could be shortened. But I can't get locked into that yet because I just don't have a crystal ball. What we've learned in 2020 and now into 2021 and now into 2022 is that the world is very uncertain with regulations and shutdowns and slowdowns and rules, and very often Cal OSHA impacts the number of people that I can have in any one place at any one time. And it's a struggle sometimes just to fill patrol shifts when we have, like amid COVID, the Omicron outbreak that we're just coming out of. And so I have to be cautious. I don't know what this future is going to hold. So that time frame is going to be influenced by the availability of personnel. Could be sooner. Those are the long dates just to have them as a target point. CCW application processing and the investigation of those applications is going to be assigned as part of other duties to individuals that are assigned in the administration division. So while this is something that we are embarking upon, we do have other tasks that they will be assigned to do, some of which are legislatively required, which is why there has been a delay and of us starting at this point. 2021 saw a lot of new legislation and law changes for reporting of law enforcement to a lot of state and federal agencies, and a lot of new data collection, including the Racial and Identifying, RIPA, the Racial Identifying Profiling Act. We had to develop a process, a system, a computer system, implement that system, train the officers to do that. And we had to have that all turned on by January 1st. And that took about 3 months for us to working full time. So there are little things that will pop up. So I just need to reassure people that this is a forefront. It is a priority in the administration of the department. However, it's one of several priorities. Obviously, hiring personnel and filling vacant positions and ranks, providing staffing so that we can provide adequate public safety in the field and have adequate public safety investigators for following up investigations. Those are going to be our primary considerations. And so these will be added tasks to a lot of people. Next slide, please. Flock. So we're talking about crime, and we're talking about what we're doing to embark on new and different things to be responsive to our community and to try to set the tone for those individuals who live outside the boundaries and the lines of what is legal and what is lawlessness. And Flock is an investigative tool that's working for us. Monthly, this is a monthly average. There are about over 1,200 investigative searches completed through our system. So that's both our officers and adjoining police departments looking for suspects of crimes, tapping into the system, looking for those particular suspect vehicles. Say a residential burglary occurs, it's a Hyundai, it's blue, it's got a sticker in the window, it's 4 doors. You can search for those vehicle dynamics in the system and other systems that are all interconnected. And the odds are that you'll capture a license plate, which will be provided to the detectives, and they can chase down that investigative lead. On average, we scan about almost 7 million license plates each month. That's each month. Now, granted, many of them are people coming and going from work, so they're going to get scanned twice a day, depending on how many times they hit how many cameras and how many times they hit different cameras. But those are also people passing through the city, deliveries, people coming to shop in the city, and the very small majority of them are the criminal element, that fringe element that we're hoping to catch. 122 per month is what our average is, and that's for stolen vehicles, felony vehicles, missing vehicles, vehicles wanted in crimes, and other things, not just for Glendora, but all Flock agencies. Just a quick reminder, we have 30 cameras throughout the city, spread out, providing fairly comprehensive coverage in our city. We have more cameras than our neighboring cities. We did that on purpose because we tend to have a lot of in and out traffic into our marketplace, where our commercial crimes and our theft of vehicles tends to occur a little bit more in that area. So we really wanted to capture that area. Next slide, please. Case examples, this is where we highlight what we've done. Remember, this is only when we turn the system on, which was September 30th to December 31st. Not very long, but this is our success. 15 grand theft auto recoveries with 9 suspects arrested. 1 at-risk missing youth that was located. 1 robbery suspect plate located. So that was a case where a person committed a robbery. We had a very specific vehicle. That vehicle dynamic was entered into the system, and we were able to locate the plate. That suspect was identified and arrested. 2 separate armed robbery suspects were arrested. That time, 1 had armed with a firearm. 1 carjacking suspect was in custody. Again, the carjacking didn't occur in Glendora, but like all things Glendora, people end up here. And so that suspect was located in Glendora from an outside agency case. 1 domestic violence stalking case solved. And 3 catalytic converter suspects have been identified and captured. Little picture there that was snatched on our last case last month, or I'm sorry, 2 months ago, right around the end of December. And this was a great case. This was another case where we had 2 or 3 catalytic converters get stolen in a particular neighborhood. One of the neighbors caught on their Ring camera a suspect vehicle. We took that information, entered it into the Flock system. Very quickly, they were able to track that car driving around neighborhoods where other thefts have occurred on similar times and dates with catalytic converter thefts, not just here in Glendora, but elsewhere. Found a plate, figured out where they were, followed them, caught them in the act. Great case, great success. So we're going to continue our effort using that tool. Next slide, please. Crime statistics. So we are in February, so we have crunched. It takes about 30 days for the numbers to come in from December 31st, and in our internal system, what that means for Part 1 crimes. And so I broke this out. Part 1 crimes are homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, theft, auto theft, and arson. And I've split it into property and violent, just so that we could get a comparison. Elvia, before we go to the next slide, you can go ahead and flip to it, but I'm going to say this with a disclaimer to everyone. You heard me speak of COVID. We still talk about COVID. We talk about what that's done to schools and to the economy, to our lives and our livelihood and our friends and family. And, even now tonight, we're meeting via Zoom instead of standing in front of each other, smiling and seeing each other's faces. There's mask mandates, there's rules in place, there's lots of things that we have to do. And so COVID affected those, and they did the same thing with statistics. Next slide, please. So in 2020, you'll notice that there was a really sharp downturn of Part 1 crimes from 2019. If I were to just present to you 2020 and 2021, I don't think that would be a good representative of where we were. So I took a 3-year study to take a look at it. 2019 was our year that led right up to the end, where that would be what a more typical year for Part 1 crime reporting. Then COVID happens. Then we start staying home. Schools get shut down. People are not out shopping as often. Cars are not crashing on the freeway. Things are slowing down. All of our lives are affected, and the crime stats plummet in response to that. You'll see it's a 21% decrease. As we emerge out of 2020 and start getting back into some sense of normalcy into 2021, our numbers are elevating up to 1,258, still down 4% from 2020, but significantly still down from 2019. I think it's important to show that even though we're lower than we were in 2020 and much lower than we were in 2019, as we start getting into this new normalcy, I would expect those numbers to plateau up a little higher for 2022, just on the national average, and Glendora kind of stays consistent on that front. Next slide, please. Breaking out it a little further, this is just our violent crime. Violent crimes in 2019, again, that's homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Aggravated assault for the layperson is just a fancy term for an assault which causes great bodily injury. This isn't your standard, someone pushed me and I pushed them back. That's a simple battery. This is someone who strikes somebody with a weapon, or strikes somebody hard enough that they cause significant injury, like fractures and such. So 2019, we were at 154, 2020, all the way down to 101, 2021, climbing out of that, and still lower than in 2019. But it's important to see that the numbers shift again when we go to the next slide for property crimes. Go ahead, Elvia. So burglary, theft, auto theft, and arson. 2019, we're at 1,508. That is about our standard number. 2020, it plummets to 1,204. Pretty significant drop of about 300 cases reported. Even though auto thefts went up, home burglaries went down. Even though certain things went up, there was a fluctuation. There wasn't many stores open, so the theft rate went down. It fluctuated depending on how we were proceeding out of in the midst of the COVID year of 2020. Now in 2021, we reported 1,138 Part 1 property crimes in the city. Next slide, please. I think it's important to note that all of these statistics, although you cannot get a 3-year study because it will lock up the city's system, but all of the statistics for both Part 1 crimes, crime mapping, local community concerns are available on our website through the community dashboard. You can do a 30-day look. You can do a 7-day look. You can chart in your own neighborhood. Next slide, please. Not only does you have the ability on the top left to select different crimes, natures, and circumstances. That's everything from homeless calls for service to animal control related issues. But you can change from 30 days to longer or shorter, depending on what kind of data set you're looking at. It will break it up into small grids, as you can see, case examples below. The most frequent days where crime is being reported, which is Wednesday, Thursdays, still very high. And time of day is generally afternoons. You'll see on the left, there's incidents by hour, and there's some spiking numbers there. Kind of gives people an idea when things are out. And if you look at a representative example, go out on a Wednesday, Thursday, between 2 and 6 p.m., a lot of people out, a lot of shoppers, a lot of people doing school activities, a lot of people on the move, and a lot of things get reported during those times. Next slide, please. Community dashboard also allows for you to dive right into what you're looking for. I'm not going to name them all down, but it's broken up into incidents, circumstances, and natures. A lot of times people wonder how many fireworks calls we had during the month of July, because that's illegal to have fireworks in Glendora. You can look at that data set. You can plot it on the map, which I'll show you on the next slide. You can do date options of 7, 14, or 30 days, and it'll do comparative numbers, this 30 days versus the previous set of 30 days. Next slide. As indicated, uses Google Maps. So you, on the left, go ahead and click around Elvia. It'll populate some circles. Next slide. On the left, you can populate by clicking particular incidents. We've named them in simple language so that people can track them better, and you can get to what you really want to see. You can turn them on and off by quickly toggling them. Clicking them on and off will populate them on the screen. And if you hover over an incident when you click it, it'll give you the date it occurred, the approximate location. Remember, we will hide some details because we don't want crime victims' addresses out there. And it will give you a disposition of what occurred. Again, the data set, top right corner, 7-day, 14, or 30 days, and it'll be a comparison. Next slide, please. Changing gears. LA County District Attorney. Let me see here. Let me look at mine and make sure that I'm seeing exactly what Elvia is seeing. I am. All right. So, we had our initial meeting with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Group. This is a special advisory group in response to the letter that was authored on behalf of the City Council, asking for really some deeper dive into the data and what the special directives and how us as a local agency were being adversely affected by those special directives. We had our initial meeting. There was representatives from the LADA's office there. Mayor Karen Davis was there, city manager, assistant city manager, myself, and our captain were all present on this meeting to talk about some real world case examples. Next slide, please. Our goal was really simple. We wanted the DA's office to hear us. We wanted them to really look at the cases that had been rejected based on the special directives and re-examine them. Basically, give them another look. Why is this particular case a reject? We also wanted them to recognize that certain repeat offenders are problematic in our community. That person who is constantly under the influence of drugs, standing in front of a local convenience store, harassing people, that is a problem. And when we arrest that person and detain that person and issue that person a citation, and then that case gets automatically dismissed because of the special directive, you know, over and over and over again, somewhere there has to be a line of that they've crossed the line of doing this too many times. One time is too many times, but we needed to chart a pathway to address these. And so we worked with the DA's office. Pleased to report that we've had some successes. I won't say that we've had huge success, but we have had some successes. We have found a way with our liaison with the DA's office and our court filing officer and our detective bureau supervisors to examine some case examples of individuals who are repeat offenders and were clearly rejected based on the special directives for no other reason. We challenged the DA's office to look at those cases from our lens, from the community lens, from the lens that they can't tell us that this drug offender needs treatment without providing us that opportunity to get that individual into treatment. There's got to be some mechanism for entering that person into the system. And so we chose some cases that were clearly repeat offenders and found our way all the way to the top, to the special advisors, to District Attorney Gascon, who approved filing these cases. And so now those cases are working their way back down into the criminal justice system. What this has done is created regular and active collaboration between the DA's office and the city, mainly the police department. We talk to the special advisor almost weekly about case examples. Next slide, please. So really what we wanted to do is dive into it and be very transparent. Everyone wants to know. So in 2021, we were able to send 2,496 cases to the DA's office. That's a lot. Not a lot when you compare larger agencies, not a lot when you compare it to some of the big ones like LAPD or LA Sheriff's Department. But that's a lot for the city of Glendora. 437 cases were rejected by the DA's office. That's 17.5%. So that's just a flat reject. Now, of those rejects, it could be for a myriad of things, like the victim no longer wants to prosecute, the victim doesn't cooperate with the investigation. Maybe there's a witness that recants once it gets down to the courthouse for a criminal filing. There's a lot of reasons that cases get rejected once it hits the DA's office and in the courtroom. But 58% of those DA rejects were attributed to the special directives. So that's 254 cases, or 10% of the total. And of those offenses, you can see I listed them out here. 187 of them were narcotics cases. So that's somebody who's under the influence of a narcotic, methamphetamine, heroin, something of that illicit drug nature, being in possession of that same narcotic, or being in possession of the paraphernalia to use that, a meth pipe, smoking implements to smoke heroin, hypodermic needles if it's something illicit like that type of offense. 11 were drunk in public cases. So this is your person who's belligerent at a bar, belligerent in public, belligerent in a public space, and for their own safety and the safety of the community, they are arrested and taken to sober up in our local detention facility. 14 cases were trespassing cases. So this is people who are trespassing on private property and commercial property, who either even were warned or were served with notice prior, but the DA did reject those cases. 9 of them were for delaying or resisting a police officer, which is concerning. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then there was another 22 that were related to vehicles. And that's anything from some driving offenses to some vehicle embezzlement and other type of offenses. And then there's 11 random other ones, which are fell into kind of outside these quantifiable characteristics, which were low-level misdemeanor first-time offenses that met the special directive threshold for a reject. So let's go back to delaying and resisting an officer. So one of the causes for concern is, your standard, an officer gets called to the scene of a disturbance. That person refuses orders to do A, B, and C. To lessen the risk, we put hands on them, we move them out of the way, we de-escalate the situation. Invariably, if the person fights with the officer, kicks the officer, takes a swing, the fight's on, we get that person subdued in handcuffs, arrest them, take them to the station, give them time to cool off out of the situation. We would cite that person for resisting arrest. The district attorney has found that unless there is a pattern of behavior with that same individual, they will not file those cases. So those are especially troubling to me as the leader of the police department, that we have that to contend with. Oftentimes, individuals know this already, and so it's a little troubling. Since the special directives have applied, our reject rate has doubled. Plain and simple, from 7.4 in 2019, and we're at 17.5 now. So, like I said before, there is a certain amount of our district attorney rejects that are always been rejects. And those are things that tend to be out of our control. Like I said, interpretation of law, victim no longer wants to prosecute. There's a lot of little things that are involved in there. But to compound it with now 254 or 58% of them being just for the special directives, there was the problem. Next slide, please. So let's talk about our successes. They're minor successes, but we have charted a path, and I'm a little bit proud to toot our horn on this a little bit. We chose 23 cases to take a look at, 23 out of 254 for our court officer and the DA's office, law enforcement liaison, and the head filing DA at our local courthouse to take a look at. And like I said before, these were really egregious. These are individuals that have case example is an individual that has been caught smoking methamphetamine, sitting in a lawn chair in the middle of an intersection several times over. I mean, just really illicit lawlessness, creating a public safety risk by sitting there using illicit narcotics in a public place in front of the entire world. And every time we arrest this offender, we cite him, we seize his narcotics, cite him, but it's never addressed through the criminal process. So those repeat offenders were examined, and out of those 23, 4 cases against 3 individuals were looked at. Not a huge success, I realize that. We did have another minor success, is that a lot of cases that were getting rejected through the special directives for driving related offenses, and that's someone driving without a license, someone driving on a suspended or revoked license, for very narrow things, weren't being filed on criminally. Instead, we have shifted through the court system by collaborating with them. And instead of sending those misdemeanor driving offenses into the misdemeanor criminal court system, we're sending them into the traffic court as infractions. Basically what it does is it lessens it from a misdemeanor to an infraction. Instead of incarceration as an alternative behind the offense punishment, it's an infraction which always would carry a fine with no incarceration pending behind it. Whole point is we want people to become licensed, and if we incarcerate them or threaten to do things with them when that on that front from a criminal justice perspective, it may not gain us the goal of having the person licensed. The goal is to have everyone licensed, everyone insured, cars crash, it happens. I want the person that rear ends my daughter to have a license and be insured so that we can take care of this in a civil way. The goal is to get those unlicensed and suspended or revoked licensees into traffic court, get them properly licensed with some fines, and remove that threat of incarceration. So that's working. Because of our effort with the DA's office and because of our continued collaboration and meeting with them and contacting them constantly about looking at these cases, we're the first city in the county to find a way all the way to the top to meet with DA Gascon's special advisors, his bureau chiefs, really looking at these case examples, these egregious violations. And no other agency has found their way to the top to have these looked at. We found our way up there. We got them filed. They're back down in the court system. One case did not make it back down, and that was a failure. That was a training failure, which we've already addressed with the district attorney's office. The other case was pled out, which is great. That means that case against that offender was used as part of a global plea agreement. So our conviction stands with him. And the other one is out for warrant because the subject has refused to come to court. So we'll have to navigate that one when that individual makes it into the courthouse. So those are our test cases to see how we're going to proceed. Minor successes can build into larger successes. We're trying to still, even though we have policies that we have to work with, even though we don't like the policies, we have to find a way to work within those confines. Just like COVID, just like we're doing tonight. If the rules say we can't meet in person because of health risks, then we find a way to do it. And so we're trying to find a way to do this. And I won't sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work taking our court officer to compile the data, find statisticians to grab those arrest histories and determine when a multiple or an egregious offender needs to be evaluated. We have to find our path up to the top, do a lot of talking to get our way into the room to get those cases evaluated and filed. And then we have to shepherd them back down into the local courthouse. And it's an undertaking, plain and simple. But it's a success. Other communities are choosing to not do anything with these cases, but we are. We're trying to address the community concerns. I think there's value in doing this. I think that the more often we can take these repeat offenders and these egregious violations up and have some successes and at least be heard, I think every time we do that, that's a success, and it's building a safer community. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I have a suspicion that it probably generated a few questions for council. I'm happy to answer anything that might be thrown at me. And if I don't have an answer, if a statistic I can't quote on at the very moment, I will get back to you.
Okay, if there's anyone that has any brief questions or clarifications.
I do.
Okay, Mr. Alawas.
Thank you, Karen. Chief, thank you very much and I appreciate your quarterly reports and your efforts. And this is a particularly tough case, particularly with dealing with the DA. I guess there's two ways of looking at it. You have less than a 1% success rate and a greater than 99% failure rate. It's a way of looking at it, not necessarily something we want to look at. But it is what it is currently, and I applaud your efforts trying to find a path forward. It's important. A couple of things. Have we had any more discussion on handling our own misdemeanors?
Internally, I've talked with the city manager and city attorney. There are some cities in Los Angeles County that are embarking on this. We haven't explored the legalities of what that would look like or even what the cost would be. But yes, there have been some preliminary discussions about this, sir.
Okay, and just for clarity on the flock cameras, I believe we only keep the data for just a few days, and then we don't keep any longer than that?
30 days, and then they're wiped clean.
Okay, perfect. And on the, is it possible for you to look into on the police website to put a button on the front web page for the community dashboard?
Yes, absolutely.
Because right now you have to kind of file through there and try to find it. And for those watching, the web address is pd20.communitydashboard.info/Glendora. And so it's a little challenging to find. On the concealed carry, on the fee schedule, is it possible to bring that up as far as, because we could possibly say 30 to 60 days on that process if we have the discussion with council before the June timeframe?
I think that Mr.
That's
Raymond,
definitely something, Councilman, that we can talk about internally and work with finance to see if that's a feasible consideration.
Okay, I would appreciate if we can look into that. And last question that I have is on the Supreme Court, that's in the Supreme Court right now, the New York Rifle and Pistol Association that brought suit that the Supreme Court took, and they're going to have a determination in hopefully sometime around in June. How will that affect your policies and procedures that you're now putting together?
well, I'll just say a high level to be determined. I don't know, Mr. Widener probably interject as well. We honestly don't know what their finding will be and how that would change the requirements at this point.
Okay,
A change-
but I would have a pulse on.
I mean,
Yeah,
everybody loves to project what the Supreme Court will do. And the only thing that's certain about the Supreme Court is that it's hard to predict what it's going to do. So
I guess what I'm trying to say is either way, whatever the decision is, will it affect how you put your procedures together?
it may, yes. In
Yeah.
fact, I think one of the things that if I would amend the chief's report, I would say that the Lexipol policy, while it may be drafted and while it needs to be customized, may have to be rewritten depending on what the Supremes do, which could slow the process down yet again. So this notion that we got to have a firearm permit process issued in place tomorrow is just unreasonable. And with all due respect to the earlier speakers, anyone in Glendora who wants a CCW need only apply to the sheriff's office tomorrow morning when they open. And there's no reason to believe that the sheriff's office is going to be any harder on issuing CCWs than the chief of police will be when the chief adopts his own policy. All policies are going to be fair, just, reasonable, and lawful. So,
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Chief.
you're welcome, sir.
Hey, Mr. Russell, public comment is closed, so the questions would be from council members at this time. Any other council members with a question or a comment?
Yeah, I do.
Clarification? Mr.
Madam
Freeman?
Mayor,
Oh.
I just like to ask a couple things. Chief, on the CCW, do you know the amount of folks that live in our city that currently have that?
No.
No, okay. On the Gaston issue, is there a current lawsuit that is pending against him that have been filed by some DAs? If there is, could you or Bill give us an update on kind of what that's about and where it might go?
I can do that.
Okay.
That lawsuit was filed some months ago. A number of the special directives were struck down. We provided the council with a briefing about that, and I can pull that briefing out and send it to you. Gascon said that he disagreed with the ruling of Judge Chalifant, but would obey the ruling pending appeal. Right now, the rulings of the trial court are on appeal before the Second Appellate District, and I have not heard if there has been a decision yet. I would be very surprised if there is, because as the chief mentioned, with respect to law enforcement services, COVID has had a significant delaying impact on all things judicial as well.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
But the answer, council member, is some, but not all of the directives were struck down.
Okay. Last one, Chief. For the cities that have voted no, I guess the obvious thing is that nothing is being filed. Is that true? Or even in those cities, are some things being filed? And I guess my point is, what what has been the effect of the 30 plus towns that have voted no against him?
Well, that's kind of a tough question to answer. I would say that when we embarked on our collaborative effort to try to find that exception pathway,
Right.
We were the first to do it. So since then, I don't know how many other agencies have used that available option or are even spending the time to do this. I can speak to this. I know of a particular city in Los Angeles County that will arrest a drug violator or a person who is committing a public offense that is within the scope of that special directive 20-07, which are these misdemeanors, which are kind of our local community concern. And they're not even sending those cases down to be rejected. They're not wasting the staff or the personnel time to even embark on that. They're ending the case right then and there internally, which police departments have the option to do. They're not sending the drugs down for review, for criminal analysis to prove what it is or isn't. We have continued to send them down so that we can accurately report back to you and the public what's really happening. So I think the challenge is there's probably some agencies that are trying to navigate this exception. I don't know if those agencies out there are in the same communities or are associated with a city that has taken the vote of no confidence against Mr. Gascon or not. I really can't answer that. I can just tell you that what we've done and how hard we've worked to try to find that path, and it's not a great success, as Mr. Alawas points out.
Right.
But it's better than a 0, which I can report other agencies have. So take it for what it's worth at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update, the very extensive updates that you have given us tonight. I want to applaud the honesty that you have spoken in, and just want to say thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief. Certainly appreciate the encouraging news, and it is encouraging. I also appreciate the fact that you made a recommendation a few months ago for the flock camera system, supported it, and quickly it's coming to fruition and proven to be a great recommendation. So great integrity there. Certainly also appreciate the collaborative effort to take those small victories with the DA versus just getting the door closed. So thank you for that. And I would encourage us on the CCW issue to, as rapidly as possible, continue those processes of development. And if we can get some of the fee schedules and things in front of us to review as best you can recommend, that would be as good as well, just to get some closure on it and get it set in place, as seems to be the direction we may be moving. But thanks to the great work. Take the even COVID influenced crime reduction as a win. I think we're in good shape those ways. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you.
And yes, go ahead, Mr. Boyer.
Please, I got a couple of questions here because, looking at these numbers, it's a little bit shocking. I just want to clarify some things. So Matt, Glendora PD submitted 2,500 cases in 2021 to the district attorney's office. That's correct?
Yes.
Approximately 500 were rejected. So does that mean they prosecuted 2,000 of the cases that we submitted to them?
Yes.
Okay. 2,500 people, that's 5% of our population. Do you have any idea of those 2,500 cases, how many individuals we are looking at, and how many of those were multiple repeat offenders?
No, not at this time, no.
Okay.
That is data that we can collect now that we do have a better, more accurate way to track data. And that's something that we can ask for and that I can have provided to you at the next update, if that's something you're interested in.
It's just an interesting statistic. It's hard to believe that 5% of the people that live in Glendora have had cases submitted to the DA's office. So
pause on that respectfully, sir. That's assuming that all of those people were Glendora residents. Very often people come through town or do not live in Glendora, but commit criminal offenses in Glendora. So if we're going to dive down there, I would probably want to grab the data for you to see how many are Glendora residents versus not. And then I think that might be a better, more comparable statistic to look at.
Okay, appreciate it. And then of the 2,000 cases that were prosecuted, how satisfied are you with the outcome of those prosecutions? I mean, is it bad guys that were put away for a period of time, or was it somebody, the majority that were prosecuted and let off with a slap on the wrist for things that in years past they may be spending some time with their fellow criminals? Well,
that's a little hard one to answer as well. I would say that we've had some really good successes because, with some really good felony cases, both domestic violence and child abuse related issues, where people have received, not only been criminally prosecuted, but received some very significant jail or prison time behind it. But you pair that with, say, your second or third time offender doing X, Y, and Z, maybe a robbery case, some kind of extensive fraud that's fairly convoluted. And the way of the world of the local custody in the county court system has been to reduce the population in the jails, to reduce the COVID transmission rate in those confined settings. And so where we would normally see somebody get sentenced to 30 or 45 days for a particular kind of low level or moderate level offense, those people are being held, they're being found guilty and sentenced to 30 days, but due to the COVID restrictions and guidelines imposed, we're not seeing them stay in custody like we would hope, plain and simple. People who we want to stay in custody are getting out because of the bail reduction, the sentencing guidelines, custody population reduction amounts. And so the answer is, I'd love to see more, but managing, the sheriff has to manage not only his deputies and custody assistants and custody personnel and their own COVID safety, but all of the population of that jail, which are small cities. And in order to reduce the transmission rate and keep staff available to work and hold those people in custody, there's got to be a little bit of give and take. And so that give and take, unfortunately, is felt by all of the communities in the county where a local person may be sentenced to 30 days and only spend a day in custody.
Okay, one last question, because I don't want our PD spending a whole lot of time creating a lot of data for us to take a look at. But I also look at this and understand that there's a need to have a better understanding of this data. Is this stuff that's available somewhere, or are there companies that we may want to look at to investigate this a little bit further, to give us a little bit deeper dive?
Interesting you bring that up, because within the last 2 weeks, we located a consultant that does this for another local agency in LA County, kind of in a different shift, not looking at district attorney filing case considerations and tracking what those offenses and multiple offenders, but more crime stat oriented. And so we are using that newly found contractor to dive into any of these new reports that we want to see. It's fairly new. We're 2 weeks in. That's why the first submission of this presentation didn't have the staff yet. We're still working on getting the graphics and looking at our numbers, and she needs to validate our numbers. And I'd also like to take a moment to talk about numbers. I know that people have asked, how things are reported. Remember that we shifted last year from 2020 to 2021. There was a shift nationwide from the uniform crime reporting data, which only tracks 8 offenses, to something called IBARS, which is an incident-based reporting system, which now expands those 8 into 62, which is challenging to take the data and look at apples and apples from year to year. It'll be okay from 2021 into 2022, but it's challenging to go back and look at a 10-year data set and to see why things are so elevated. It's because an average offense can get statted in the system multiple times, perhaps even a dozen times. So it artificially inflates statistics. So we are very accurate with our stats. Our records supervisor and our records management system built a system to track our stats. Our officers build in those data sets when they take a police report or when they're reporting an offense. And so our stats are really accurate. And by proxy, it tends to show that we have a lot of crime, because when a normal person calls and says, this happened to me, say my garden hose is stolen, or, some type of low level offense, Glendora officers or CSOs will tend to take that police report, document it, where some agencies may not. And if they don't take a police report, they don't document that stat, which means there isn't an accurate crime data to look at.
Okay, I really appreciate all of this. And one of the things that we're all dealing with, I don't think there's anybody in LA County and probably the state of California that does not believe that crime is worse today than it was 10 years or 20 years ago. It's important to have accurate information to allow us to be able to make decisions and figure out how to deal with this. So I really appreciate it and look forward to this conversation continuing. So thanks, Matt. Great report.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chief. And I was just going to ask you to help with a clarification because of a question that I was asked. Someone possessing a CCW is different than a citizen's right or ability to own or possess firearms and protect their home. So even without a CCW, if you want to own guns and have those at your home and protect yourself there. So if you could clarify how a CCW is different than someone having the right to possess a firearm?
Yes, great question, great point. So a CCW is the ability to conceal a firearm on your person and carry that in a public place, concealed. That's what the permit process is meant to address, is those individuals who have that need to have that. As you stated, other people, other residents can lawfully possess firearms, keep them in their homes and defend themselves or have them available for defense of themselves and their family in a private residence or in a business, just like everyone else. But the condition to carry a loaded firearm on your person and concealed requires a permit.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your report. And with that, we move on to the consent calendar. Items 4 through 7 can be approved with one motion. I believe that Councilmember Boyer, did you want to make a comment about item 7? Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, I'm sorry, my mute button moved.
Oh.
No, I just asked, I believe Allison's going to give us a little bit more of an update. There's a lot of information in that item, and I think it's important for the residents to know the progress that we're working on the sidewalk upgrades. So, Allison?
All right, thank you, Council Member and Madam Mayor. So this is the first of our in a current CIP to do citywide sidewalk and access ramp repairs. Normally, our practice to date has been to do sidewalk improvements and access ramp repairs on all of our city street resurfacing projects. We're going to continue to do that, and this is just an addition. In this particular case, there are 3 specific kind of areas. One is we're going to replace uplifted sidewalk panels on Gladstone from Barranca to Lone Hill. And it's approximately like 9,000 square feet of sidewalk to be replaced. And then, as was mentioned in the public comment, we are putting in access curb ramps on the Country Club Road north of Foothill to Valiant, and there's 14 ramps at that location. And then our third area we're doing work is to repair some drainage at the flow line at East Camden Avenue and Rimhurst, which is south of Gladstone. And all of these were grouped together because they are all concrete work. And we propose to start the work in March, mid-March, and it'll have 30 working days, which equates to 6 weeks of work. And that concludes my information regarding this. If you have any questions, I'm be happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
I move items 4 through 7.
Second, Mendel.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Alawas, a second by Councilmember Thompson. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes, please.
thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes,
That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. All right, that takes us to unfinished business. Item 8, amend the 5-year capital improvement program to include the Finkbeiner Park Playground, restroom, and pickleball tennis court area improvement project, and approve the supplemental appropriation of $1,508,650,000 from Measure E. And I believe that Assistant Public Works Director Michael Sled will be giving the report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to present to you tonight on the topic of the proposed Finkbeiner Park Playground and restroom area improvements. Next slide, please. As you're probably aware, there was recently some significant vandalism of the Finkbeiner Park restrooms adjacent to the playground and tennis courts. And in light of this, rather than rushing to make costly but localized repairs, staff took the opportunity to perform a holistic review of the site in context of the existing restroom renovation project currently scheduled for there in 23-24. Based upon this review, we're recommending to advance the project schedule as well as expand the scope to address other needs in this area of the park. Doing so will not only provide greater recreational benefits to residents than the original project, but reduce the total amount of construction-related disruptions and create cost benefits through an economy of scale relative to if the components were renovated piecemeal in future projects. Next slide, please. So to determine the preliminary scope, staff for Public Works, Community Services, and the City Manager's Office conducted several site visits to discuss and review current conditions and potential improvements. Based upon these visits, staff recommends the proposed project include a variety of enhancements as shown here, with the most significant ones being a completely new restroom facility, new fencing, upgraded lighting, and resurfacing of the tennis courts with the conversion of 1 court to 4 pickleball courts, and installation of poured-in-place playground surfacing, which will provide increased accessibility along with less frequent maintenance. Next slide, please. Once the scope was identified, staff next gathered and reviewed recent informal cost proposals for various aspects of the project in an effort to determine a relatively accurate overall cost estimate for the whole project. Based on the estimated cost, staff would look to utilize a qualified contractor from the on-call master consultant list for the design phase. Once design was completed, construction of the project would then be publicly bid through a formal request for proposals. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the existing Finkbeiner Park restroom CFP project was scheduled for FY 23-24, and it was smaller in scale. It was primarily a renovation and then some other smaller items around it. The amended project would be moved up on the timeline and represent a more comprehensive renovation of this area of the park. If approved, staff anticipates the design would be complete by the end of FY 21-22, with construction bid out immediately afterwards and a goal to have the project completed by January 1st, 2023. One constraint on how fast we'll be able to construct it is how fast we're able to get the actual restrooms in. They're prefabricated. So I think the last time we heard there was a 6-month window on getting them in once we ordered them. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time. I noticed one thing on this. I think this the presentation slightly predates the latest edition of the report, where in the recommendation 2 here, it shows American Rescue Plan Act, and I think the plan for immediately now, depending on how that turns out, is to use Measure E rather than that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I'll bring it back to council for any questions or comments. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Michael, I just have one, and that is on your second slide, bullet point number 14. Could you give us kind of a sense of the cameras that are going to be up there? I really hope that if these knuckleheads try to ever do this again, that we can catch them. So are the cameras going to be such that we can hopefully catch these kind of folks?
I mean, that would be the goal, yeah, that they would actually have a point. So yeah, well, I mean, we want to get something good in there to where it has enough detail that we can actually see when things are going on. We'll have to look at the placement. That hasn't been finalized yet. I mean, I have seen some requests where people mention the idea of putting them in restrooms. Obviously, we're not going to put cameras inside the restrooms. It's not an option.
Right.
But,
I would not support that. Yeah. But I'm just saying, that's a big area, and I hope we have more than just one. And I don't know what all of the technical or the security folks say, but I'm really upset, as I think all of us are, that these knuckleheads were able to do what they did and get away with it. And I hope that that area is just covered, so that if anybody wants to do anything, that we can see the type of jeans that they wear, or something like that. So I just want to support that, and was just trying to get kind of your sense. So
yeah,
that's all. Yeah.
We actually have done some walks of that site, looking at security specifically with contractors prior to this, related to the citywide security assessment, and getting proposals on that. So we have received proposals related to that. So we do have some idea even now on where we may be able to place them based on that.
Great. Well, thank you.
Mendel, maybe we should ask the chief to put some flock cameras on the proposed new bathroom.
Boy, well, maybe on the outside, but I mean, this is where kids go. I take my grandkids there, and this park needs to be safe. And I just hope that security is as high there as we can make it. So I would support anything that we can do there. So thank you.
Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Karen. Michael, thank you for your brief presentation. I had a conversation earlier with Adam about using the American Recovery Act funds for this, as opposed to the Measure E, because I know that they changed some of the procedures. Who's actually in charge of reviewing if we can use this or not? And what do you think the time frame is? Either you or Adam can opine on this.
Actually turn it over to Moises to provide some clarity and detail moving forward.
Yeah, good evening on Mayor and City Council. As you know, when we presented the expenditure plan for the ARPA funding to you, we had contemplated expending money on improvements to parks, and that was premised on what was then called the interim final rules and kind of the associated frequently asked questions document that helped provide some clarity as to where the U.S. Treasury was heading in terms of analyzing what were eligible expenses. Since that time, and frankly, with a little bit of surprise, They have finalized that document after taking comments from a variety of jurisdictions and agencies, trying to maximize or expand the list of eligible uses for the funding. It is now less clear that we can use that money for park improvements as it was previously documented. And so part of the process that we're undergoing is reviewing those documents. I'm reviewing them alongside our staff in the Administrative Services Department to make clear what we can or cannot use them on. Should we come to the conclusion that the risk outweighs the reward, so to speak, of using this funding, there's still a plethora of other uses for this funding that we could use to help leverage some of our existing local sources of revenue. So that offset or net savings to the general fund will still be there, albeit in a different capacity.
Thank you for that, Moises. Do we have an idea in ETA when the second tranche of the American Recovery Act funds will be hitting our bank?
We anticipate receiving that in the May timeframe, which is roughly a year after the first half of the money was provided to us. We have not received any indication that there's any delay to that allocation.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, and thank you, Michael. A curiosity as poking around and looking, can a tennis court also be a pickleball court, or are the striping and line spacings dramatically different? Can they be double usage?
They're pretty, I mean, we could look at it, but they're pretty different because the pickleball courts are they're a quarter of the size pretty much.
Oh,
so
okay.
it would be might have a lot of disputes in the tennis game with the various lines.
Yeah. Not me, they always go over the fence anyway, so, okay. And the only other comment is Mendel, think taser with the camera. That's it. Thank you, Michael.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions. Thanks for the report, Michael.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you, Michael, for that report. And at this time, if anyone would like to make a motion.
Also,
I would move approval of items 1 and 2 as shown on the PowerPoint.
I'll second that.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Thompson, a second by Councilmember Alawas. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Alawas. I mean,
Mayor Davis would like to say yes. Thank you.
sorry.
So ruled.
I'm so sorry. That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Good habits.
He's always wanted to have 2 votes. Just don't give it to him. Okay, let's move on to new business. Item number 9. Award the contract for integrated water master plan and water rate study to AKM Consulting Engineers. And tonight to report on that, again, I believe Mr. Sled.
No, this will actually be me, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, and good
Welcome,
evening.
Chisholm.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So today I'll be providing an update on the integrated water master plan and corresponding rate study. As we look to award this contract and commence the assessment, if you recall last November in our special joint meeting with the Water Commission, staff provided an overview of this water infrastructure assessment. And so this report sort of highlights our progression to date. Next slide, please. So by way of background, and just to reiterate some of the primary goals and objectives for the water master plan and what we're looking to accomplish. First, we want to make sure that there's enough water to meet the projected needs for the city. And also we want to ensure that the city maintains its compliance with not only current regulations, but as well as future regulations. And that, things that are going to be impacting the water system, taking into account operations, water quality, water conservation. And also we want to continue to improve and optimize the resiliency of the system and understand and prioritize the needs of our water system. And really, all of this will culminate into the development of a long-term capital plan for the water system with the projected costs for the various infrastructure improvements. And finally, we want to continue to develop a robust and innovative water use efficiency program to better manage our demands and promote conservation as a way of life. Next slide, please. And so we developed an RFP to solicit proposals from qualified consultants. And we received a total of 3 proposals ranging in cost from just over $480,000 to $545,000 as outlined on this table. And so during the last 2-year budget development process, staff estimated and budgeted $500,000 for this assessment, which we'll touch on a bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So in developing an evaluation criteria for rating the various proposals, we understood the importance of retaining a consultant that could really provide us a valued product. And so this table lays out how we evaluated the proposals and how we weighed the values of certain items. Some key items we focused on included the approach to design. So essentially, what is their proposed planning criteria as it relates to water demand and supply analysis? What are some of their approach to system condition assessments, water quality evaluation, et cetera. And more importantly, how does this fit into the water needs of our system here in our community? We also took into account the consultant's experience, both as a firm and as a project team. We wanted a consultant that had extensive experience in the development of water master plans and rate studies for municipalities of similar size within the region of Southern California. And the review process also included an interview of the more qualified consultants, which really gave staff the opportunity to ask specific qualifying questions as it pertains to their various proposals. Next slide, please. And so shown here are the results of the evaluation, with the scores ranging from 75% to 98%. As you can see, AKM consulting engineers scored above average on much of the criteria as listed and scored the highest of the proposals received at a 98%. And hence is our recommended consultant to proceed with the assessment. The proposals and oral interviews were evaluated by a 3-member team consisting of staff from various divisions within the Public Works Department, as well as our Finance Department. Next slide, please. And so shown here is the fiscal impact of the assessment. And just to provide some background, as alluded to earlier, we budgeted $500,000 initially for this work, with $250,000 funded for fiscal year 22 and another $250,000 program for fiscal year 23. And initially, the idea was to complete the infrastructure assessment or phase 1 in the first year, followed by a rate study or phase 2 in the subsequent year. Since then, we have reevaluated the need to complete both the assessment and the rate study simultaneously within 1 year, thereby allowing us to have a new water rate structure in place by January of 2023. And so with that being said, important to note here is that AKM's initial bid was actually just over $544,000. However, staff was able to negotiate the cost down to $499,948 as shown on this table. And with the 10% contingency, the total proposed amount came out to $549,942.80. Next slide, please. And so this is a high-level schedule of what we're looking at for the assessment. Included in your meeting packet is a more detailed schedule of performance, which lists out some critical deliverables and corresponding milestones for this assessment. And just to name a few, we're looking to receive an updated water hydraulic model, capital improvement project recommendations, new revenue and expenditure models, et cetera. And really, staff understands the importance of staying on schedule, which is why we've built into this agreement monthly progress reports from the consultant, monthly project coordination meetings, weekly project updates, and a number of workshops and public outreach meetings. And so, looking at this Gantt chart, we have completed items 1 and 2, which includes developing and advertising an RFP. The next phase will include the actual assessment and rate study, which is slated to occur this calendar year. As a matter of fact, we actually have the kickoff meeting scheduled for tomorrow, with the anticipation that we will have a final water master plan and new rate structure in place by January of 2023. Next slide, please. And so staff recommends that your council awards a professional services agreement to AKM Consulting Engineers for the Integrated Water Master Plan and Rate Study in the amount of $499,948 with a 10% contingency in the amount of $49,994.80, for a total amount of $549,942.80. And authorize the city manager or his designee to execute the agreement, including minimal and or non-substantive changes. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Chisholm. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thanks, Chisholm. Great news, and look forward to this. Just if you would verify for me, my understanding is the infrastructure assessment would include mapping and things that would help firm up and overlay to the recent program we established with ERSI recently for our capital improvements and streets, and where are the pipes and all that? Is that accurate?
Well, for the infrastructure assessment, we will sort of undertake a comprehensive assessment of all of our pipelines, and again, the objective and idea is to prioritize those based on leak history, installation dates, things of that nature.
Sure.
And again, to be quite frank, we are starting from scratch in terms of looking at our system and making a determination on what we need to prioritize.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart direction, and start from scratch, figure out where they're at and what kind of shape. So very good. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Karen. Chisholm, thank you very much for your report. I'm really enjoying working with you. I like your energy of our water. We have a lot to still to do. I couldn't find it in here, historical data. Have we ever done a study like this before?
We have our what we call our urban water management plan and our water master plan, which essentially we have to undertake every 5 years and update every 3 years. However, this, I believe, is the first time we are undertaking something like this of this magnitude. And again, that's really taking a look at all of our system from both an operations and water distribution to water supply. Again, diversifying our water supply portfolio. Again, from my recollection, this is the first time the city is undertaking an initiative of this magnitude.
So I tried to find the details, and David had skinned on this as well about GIS system and where the pipes are and things of that nature. But on page 223 of our staff report, it looks at the contract that we have with these folks, but it doesn't detail really what the deliverables are. It had level of items. Is there anywhere in this report that I maybe have missed, or that you can highlight what the real deliverables are? What are we going to see? And to David's point, are we going to get maps of all of our pipes? Any idea if there's a rating system? I know they're buried on the ground. Or is there any technology to find out how good these things are, how old they are? Do they need to get replaced besides just leak status? Because when we patch something else is going to go out because now the pressure's changed. Is there any, what kind of tools are we going to get, or support are we going to have?
Yeah, no, great question, Councilman. So it is actually in the packet as far as the deliverables, which is outlined in the contract. But essentially what you just mentioned is a part of it is an updated water map in terms of where exactly our water infrastructure is. And secondly, we are going to prioritize that based on risks of breakage. So essentially, which ones are higher risk of breakage and which ones are not. So that's number one. Secondly, we do want to get an updated hydraulic model. And essentially what that's going to do is let us know how adequate our pressure zones are in terms of do we have adequate pressure to meet fire zones or do we not? And what type of projects do we need to implement if we don't have adequate pressures to meet fire zones? And really, finally, the ultimate deliverable, Councilman, will be a final water infrastructure master plan report. And in this report, it will detail everything we need to do really in order to bring our system up to compliance. And that's phase one. The second phase or phase two will be a new water rate structure or recommended water rate structure for us to be able to adequately fund phase one of the assessment. And again, the detail is outlined in the packet.
Yes.
If I can provide just a little bit of clarity, Councilman, so you can take a look, page 285 of your packet. Under section 5, project understanding, the consultant lays out their comprehensive analysis, and subsequent sections provide detailed deliverables for every one of those sections. In phase one specifically, there are 14 data points from project management to collection of data to hydraulic model update to master plan development to final report. And then phase 2 includes project management through fee study, et cetera, that Chisholm outlined, and every one of those is provided in detail in the attachments to this item.
All right. Is this also going to be system-wide, meaning like the Irwindale facilities, we have 3 wells there. Will it touch on that as well?
Yes, it will. As a matter of fact, and in addition to that, the feasibility study for those Irwindale wells, the consultant will also look into potential funding sources and, by way of grants, partnerships with other municipalities, things of that nature.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I just want to say thank you for what you've done to teach us and show us the plan that we need. This is going to help us to assimilate the housing that the state is going to expect us to have. As you briefly touched on it, the mountains that we have, the fires that potentially we could have, to make sure that the water's there. A lot of people have said, and I agree because I'm neck deep into this, the goal line is probably the biggest thing that we've ever seen. But actually, I think this is really the biggest thing that we are needing to work on. And if there's a legacy for any of us, the city itself, this is the kind of plan that we need. My dad, he always said, son, you need to measure twice and cut once. And this plan is enabling us to do this. So I fully support it. I like the questions that Michael just raised. I'm a big fan of looking at what the Irwindale wells can achieve for us. And I know that's not a short-term goal. It's probably 4, 5, 6 years out, but we need a plan, and we don't have this kind of plan. And so thank you for working on this, being the point on this. And if the good Lord will bless us with a little bit more of the wet stuff, then it'll help our plan to even be a better one. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Chisholm, question for you and or Allison. Have you guys ever been through this type of a comprehensive study of an infrastructure and everything before?
And I'll sort of let Allison answer, but in my 10 months of being here, this is, from my understanding, the first time we are undertaking an assessment of this magnitude.
But I'm even asking with other agencies.
Yeah. Councilman, I can just add from my experience. I know Moises, who's on this call as well, both have experience doing this in both a water and electrical infrastructure assessment. I believe Allison, and I'll let her talk about her experience in other areas, but as indicated by Councilman Thompson, the year it takes to develop this report is actually a pretty aggressive timeline. As crazy as that sounds, we heard today an update on regional water projects that are not anticipated to start till 2032. So I think with that in mind, I think something like this is requires our full attention for this next year.
And also to add to that, Mayor Pro Tem, I guess to respond to your question, this is the first time in my professional experience that I've seen an organization undertake an assessment of this magnitude. Again, there are other entities who are looking to do a thorough and comprehensive infrastructure of all of their assessments. As far as one of this magnitude, from my understanding, this is the first time that we are doing that. So.
Okay, and maybe I should have clarified why I asked the question first, but I just happened to be on a meeting today in which a one of our neighbor cities talked about just completing this type of a study, a city that's dramatically smaller than Glendora, and came away with a recommendation of a price tag. Well, actually, Allison, I think you were on that meeting, of $100 million. And when I heard that, it was a little bit shocking knowing we were going to be having this conversation tonight. So I guess my only thought process moving forward as we go through this, if we find ourselves looking at that type of a price tag or that type of a recommendation for new water infrastructure, I think it's going to be really important for us to have the ability to be able to prioritize things, because there's no way we're going to be spending $100 million in a short period of time. You know, that's a 30, 40 year commitment to try to make something like that happen. So just keep in mind, if that's the type of outcome that we may be expecting, I think a big thing that's going to come out of this is for us to understand what to prioritize and what we might be able to live with for a little bit longer. And just my 2 bits worth.
Mayor Pro Tem, I definitely appreciate that comment. I know Marie is also on this call, who's done an assessment almost exactly like this previously, can speak to sort of the prioritization, but one is the infrastructure, and the second piece of that is how we pay for it and what methods. Do we issue debt, or do we have some sort of pay-go for that initial influx? And this report and modeling should provide us those options moving forward for what any potential rate structure may need to look at to take advantage of, for example, low interest rates. So I think a price tag that shows 9 figures is definitely something that we're going to be looking at long term. But being able to have those conversations, and honestly being fortunate to have the water board that we do, with the experience that we have on that board to help guide staff through that process and help us speak publicly, is going to be an important process. But your point is definitely not lost on us as a staff level, and probably something, you know, obviously we need to get ready to present sooner than later, is bringing the public to understand both the magnitude of the price and put that in perspective. Because as you mentioned, a 30 to 40 year plan is definitely something we would have to look at long-term projects, and how we sort of take the first bite of what is inevitably a very large apple.
Okay, appreciate the update. Great report, and looking forward to going through this process. Thanks.
And I would echo thank you for the work on this. And to answer your question a little bit, Mayor Pro Tem, 2006 to 2008, a study not nearly of this magnitude, but was done looking at the infrastructure and a water rate study, and gave the council a lot of heartburn and how they were going to pay for things and whether or not go with rate increases. So it's good that everybody is going into this with eyes open, because there will be those decisions and choices to make as we look at our infrastructure. So thank you. And I noticed that Debbie Lopez has a raised hand, but I don't know if it's for this item, if there was something you wanted to add.
So I apologize. This is Marie. I don't know why it says Debbie Lopez on my Zoom. But I wanted to share my experience that I have gone through master plans and infrastructure assessments for Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District, East Valley Water District, as well as the city of Arcadia. So I've gone through quite a few of these and gone through the Prop 218 process to increase rates. And I also participated on the panel to interview the consultants and ask some very pointed questions about public outreach, funding, issuing debt to make sure that we can afford these CIP projects that they may propose.
Thank you, Marie. All right, if there's no further questions, then I will entertain a motion from council.
I'll move recommendations 1 and 2.
I'll second.
Thank you. That is a motion by Council Member Alawas, a second by Councilmember Friedendahl. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
To everyone. All right, that takes us to item 10, Annual General Plan Progress Report and Housing Element Implementation Annual Progress Report. And tonight to report on that, Senior Planner Friedel.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tonight I'll be presenting a high-level overview of the 2021 Annual General Plan and Housing Element Progress Reports, which will be subsequently submitted to the state in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. Okay, so tonight we're asking that the City Council receive and file the report and authorize staff to file with the state by the April 1st deadline. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of legislative history, California Government Code requires cities to present a general plan and housing element annual progress report to the local legislative body, which is the City Council in our case, and then file with the Department of Housing and Community Development and State Office of Planning and Research. Also, I do want to mention that we presented this report to the Planning Commission last week as well. Next slide, please. So for some additional background, general plans are often called the blueprint for a community and serve as the comprehensive long-range plan that provides the framework for the city for the future growth, development, and redevelopment of the city. Glendora's general plan is called Community Plan 2025. It is made of different chapters called elements. Each element addresses a different topic and offers goals and policies related to that topic. All elements may be updated whenever is necessary, except for the housing element, importantly, which is required to be updated coinciding with each housing cycle in California. We just finished the 5th housing cycle, which ran from 2013 to 2021, and are now starting the 6th housing cycle, which runs from 2021 to 2029. Next slide, please. And here is a list or table of the current 9 general plan elements, which is land use, circulation, housing, conservation, safety, noise, open space and recreation, air quality, and historic preservation. Next slide, please. And the purpose of the annual progress report is to provide an update on the city's progress towards implementing the policies and programs identified in the general plan, as well as update on housing activity for the past year. HCD uses this information to track the city's progress in meeting its fair share of regional housing needs through the Regional Housing Needs Assessment known as RHNA. Next, I'll very briefly highlight some of the notable accomplishments for the year 2021. Next slide, please. So times continue to be strange due to the relentless pandemic. Nevertheless, in 2021, 85 total housing units did receive entitlements. 33 were permitted and 24 were built, which means they received their COs as far as our tracking, certificates of occupancy as far as our tracking is concerned. As you can see, most of those units, or a good deal of them, 18 in fact, were accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Just for some comparison, last year there were 27 total units that received certificates of occupancy or completed in Glendora. So fairly similar numbers this year as well, or last year as well. Next slide, please. One other a notable accomplishment last year was the planning. This was the city, with assistance and feedback from the Planning Commission, developed an SB 9 policy framework in about 4 months. That's Senate Bill 9, which was executed by the state in September. And this policy framework for how the city will manage SB 9 applications is now available on the website, and staff will continue to revise it as legal interpretations and directions change and it's deemed necessary. Next slide, please. Another big story in 2021 continued to be the Glendora Village Parklet program. In 2021, the city completed a parklet program manual, as well as installed 7 parklets within the village. These parklets link economic development, land use, and transportation planning, circulation elements to help the village be more vibrant and continue to be successful. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of circulation element progress, there was ongoing street maintenance and resurfacing programs that continued in 2021. Here are some images of work being done on Washington Avenue, resurfacing, and on West Dawson after an image of it after being resurfaced and striped. Next slide, please. And there was progress made towards implementing the open space and recreation element and wisely conserving Glendora's natural resources. Volunteers led by Cornerstone Bible Church worked to remove the invasive Crofton weed. Volunteers also helped with invasive crawfish removal and with trail building and maintenance. And here are some pictures of volunteers out in the field, out and about, working on some of those projects. Next slide, please. And the attached annual progress report details many more activities demonstrating progress towards achieving the goals and objectives of the general plan elements. This report will need to be submitted. So this report, we are submitting this report and will need to be submitted to the state by the April 1st deadline, and we're well on track to do that. So in conclusion, though we live in unusual times, progress continues to be made and things continue to happen. As the general plan has realized one project, program, and a few volunteers at a time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Karen. Good report. Thank you very much, Hans, for your report. Adam, do we have an update on our housing element approval with the state of California?
We have not received any comments pursuant to our second submittal at this time.
And overall, how long is it taking cities in general?
From an ancillary perspective, in talking with Jeff, and I know Bill's on the call as well, if he has any sort of information on behalf of other cities, but cities are seeing 2 to 3 rounds before approval and before it's done. But Jeff is raising his hand.
Yes.
Elvia, if we can work to get Jeff on and
Yeah,
let the councilman ask about as many detailed questions as he likes to Jeff about these submittals.
Jeff, you can unmute.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
And Mr. Kugel.
So with respect to the status of our submittal to the state, we have submitted for a first round of view late last year and received comments from the state. We've addressed those comments and submitted for a second round of review, and it's a 60-day review, and those comments are due back from the state by the end of this month. We're hoping that it doesn't go beyond a third round of review. My understanding from others is that going 3 rounds of review is not uncommon in this cycle. But after that, we hope to be able to have a certified housing element from the state and bring it back to the council to adopt.
Does the state have any deadline?
Under the current review, they have to complete their current review within 60 days of submittal. Right. So they don't have a deadline to certify our housing element, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. No more questions.
I was just gonna add, council member, that from our experience, Glendora is actually making better progress than other cities have. The other city for which I'm the city attorney just got their first round of comments, and the amount of work that HCD is going to make them do to revise and update the housing element is substantial. So I would say, based on our experience, based on our approximately 20 cities that are going through the next round, you're making better progress than most.
Great staff, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Hans, thank you for an excellent report, and I'm good with this. Support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yeah, thank you, Hans. Great report and news, and all the questions I had have been answered, so no more.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And no questions. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hans. And I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we receive and file.
Second.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Friedendahl, a second by Councilmember Alawas. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Right, that takes us to item 11, resolution declaring the existence of a local emergency due to January 2022 windstorm event. And Chief Egan, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council and public watching this evening. Just a quick verbal report. I would like, the staff is recommending that the city adopt a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Declaring the Existence of Local Emergency Pursuant to the Municipal Code within the city of Glendora due to an extraordinary wind event that occurred January 21st, 2020, January 21st to the 22nd, 2022. In anticipation of the city of Glendora accumulating repair costs, contractor fees, on-call personnel costs, and any infrastructure damage and repair items are submittal to Cal OES, which is the California Office of Emergency Services, through our conduit, which is LA County Emergency Services. A declaration of a local emergency needs to be conducted at a council resolution setting so that when we can accumulate those costs, we can submit with other communities. The cities of San Dimas, Laverne, and Claremont, as well as I believe Azusa, are declaring emergencies. And we all hope to submit claims to seek some potential either state or federal reimbursement to the city for the extraordinary wind event that occurred on the 21st and 22nd. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have on this item.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Chief. I have no questions.
Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Chief, just one, is this just for city or will others that had a tree fall or damage to their home or place of work, would they be allowed to submit a claim through this, or is that some other pathway?
That would most likely be another pathway, unless the city of Glendora had expended some type of expenditure on an emergency basis to perform some repairs or tree removal or some mitigating factors at a private business or a commercial location. More often than not, Mr. Thompson, those localized issues are handled through homeowners and commercial property private insurance. We, of course, we had our own personnel out and our own contractors doing tree removal and repairing things that went on. And so that's what we're seeking to accumulate and potentially get reimbursed for. There's no guarantee that we will get any reimbursement, but this is step number one for our submittal for this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Chief, for your report. Do we have any idea to date what our expenses have been?
About 125,000 so far.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Great. I have no other questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No questions.
Okay, very good. Then I will entertain a motion.
I move the resolution to recommendation item 1.
Second.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Alawas, a second by Councilmember Thompson. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Any council members have any closing comments? Mayor Pro Tem Boyer? Friedendahl?
No, thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Alawas?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Mr. Raymond, Mr. Winder, any department heads?
No, thank you.
Oh, no, thanks.
All right.
This is my kind of council meeting. I had to speak twice.
And you got paid for it.
And I got better still.
All right, well, with that, then tonight we will adjourn our meeting in memory of Mary Cook and in memory of Norma Rowley, and we are adjourned at 9:18 p.m. Good